Okay, I think we must distinguish between a number of issues. Okay, the ANC policy on land has been about us having to ensure that the land is returned to the people, and that all of that needs to be done within the confines of the law and the constitution. Even the one provision that was brought up in the Mangaung conference that referred to expropriation without compensation for land that was illegally obtained or that was being used for unlawful purposes. All of that was within the guidance of the Constitution. Now, the question that has arisen is how fast is the speed of return of land? How rapidly are we doing it? Is it satisfactory? I think we all generally believe that it is not satisfactory. It needs to be accelerated. And the question then is to look at what are the areas that we need to be focusing on. In the first instance, if you look at the urbanization rate, it shows that there's a lot of land hunger, people needing a land for housing. In some of the old reserves, you can see that people are overcrowded. And so you also look at the issues of land where there's been land returned to communities, where the agricultural productivity has gone down. And all of these are issues that we have to look at and take into account. Now, the discussion that we've got is how fast should we be returning the land, because it needs to be part of the basis of the economic activity of our communities. So in particular, there is a need for us to be able to address that matter. So the ANC has taken a decision right now that whilst we're going through this discussion, we will have a whole day workshop to analyze where the delays might have come from. Is it because of the slow progress in the bureaucracy, in the facilitation of land reform? Is it because there was a problem in the way the support was given to people who have received the land? Is it because there is a constraint in the legislation? Is it because there is a constraint in the constitutional provision? So we will look at all of these issues together and then deal with the issue in preparation for our national conference, now a national policy conference. Now, this issue does become an important matter when we discuss radical economic transformation, because for many people, agricultural activity is the basis of their activity, economic activity. In some of the instances, the ownership of land is a basis for the first degree of asset accumulation, which would be used to facilitate further economic activities. So it is a very important issue when we discuss the matter of radical economic transformation. But the policy conference has got us preparing documents, and so the discussion is going on. And a lot of the comments we are raising, they are in advancement of that debate.
Exactly.
No, willing buyer, willing seller, we did say we were not going to follow that approach, and that we have a legislation that is providing for fair and equitable settlement, and this is it. And I think we need to understand that this matter has become very interesting. There's been a recent court judgment, for example, that spoke about that there is no obligation for government to settle the land first before it expropriates, as long as the process of settlement will be acceptable through a process there, or maybe the court can rule on it. So in other words, the process of expropriation of land is a process that will involve a degree of negotiation, and then ultimately it can actually go to court. And I think you will also recall that when the Deputy Chief Justice raised the issue, he did say that the government has not been so very aggressive on the issue of land reform, because they have not dealt with many cases wherein the Constitutional Court had to rule on the matter. So the debate is going to be opened, and when we get to that point, we will be able to see what changes we need to make at that time, or at the policy conference. But the president is raising the urgency of the matter, and is raising the fact that this issue of land needs to be looked at, and that there are serious constraints that people are raising, and that's the point that he's raising.
Is it not hypocrisy from his side? Because the young lions of the ANC, if I'm not mistaken, in 2011 raised these very same issues, and why is the ANC going back to them after disregarding them after their 2011 conference? And the very same leadership that expelled them is now speaking about those same policies that they spoke about.
There's no hypocrisy here. If you come into an ANC process and you discuss issues, you must discuss them understanding that your view may be popular or may not be supported. And once that matter is closed, you end up with the issue where the matter was closed. And in this case, the matter was discussed in a conference. The conclusion of that conference is the resolution of the conference. Now, we can't argue after the fact and argue why your view was not taken into account. It was taken into account. It's just that you had many other views to be taken into account. So I think at the end of the day, we need to understand that there will be views during the conference, and those views will be discussed in such a way that there will be a conclusion. Now, the conclusion may bear some resemblance to some of the original proposals, or may bear no resemblance to those proposals. And when that happens, no one can turn around and say, accuse the president of hypocrisy or accuse of anyone of anything. I don't think that's the right way of understanding it. There were many views that will be brought to the organization's policy conferences, and we need to debate them and distill them into something. But also, just to say, the ANC harbors a spectrum of views from different sectors of society, and when those views are brought onto the table, the approach is to try and take the best policy decision that will help the majority of the people as we move forward. And it doesn't mean that if we've got a decision taken now, then somebody's views were not really taken into account. It just means that that was how the matter was concluded. So I think when you want to understand how we approach the policy conference, you must understand that people will come with views that are not canvassed, that could have been lobbied from other structures. And when they come in there, it must be that collective discussion process that must give us the view. But I don't also think that we can make it personal. If someone is unhappy with the conclusion of a conference, it then becomes personal to president or to someone else. It can't be like that. The issue here is that the matter of land is urgent. The matter of land is a matter that is very emotive. It was the basis on which the whole struggle was fought. And so we can't deal with it as though we do not understand that people actually feel that it needs to be addressed, and that probably there might have been weaknesses in the way the matter has been addressed up to now. And we're saying, therefore, we're going to sit through a whole analysis that will tell us exactly where the problems are. So when we go to the conference, we must propose the appropriate remedies to actually expedite the matter. No, we don't believe that the ANC is going into a route where it will lose all metros. I think we must also note when we talk about this that, yes, there was a reduction in the numbers of people who supported the ANC, but in most of these municipalities, the ANC still remains the largest party in those municipalities. But because there was a coalition of many parties, then because the ANC didn't get 50%, that's why the ANC has been unseated in some of the areas. In many countries, a party that would have got the biggest slice of support from the electorate tends to be the one that rules. Most of the parties in Europe are governing with less than 50%. Some of them 40, some of them 30, and so on. And many of them will still envy the amount of support that the ANC has. We do take seriously the fact that there was a reduction in the support of the ANC in those metropolitan areas. But on its own, it does not necessarily mean that the ANC is on a downward slide, it can't be reversed. We believe that this can be reversed. We also believe that there are many factors that have impacted on the support that the African National Congress has received in the country in general. And one thing that we must never underestimate is the fact that when you've got an economic situation such as what we've had, where there's low growth, there's high unemployment rate, and then the poverty is still a big problem, that, voters tend to punish the ruling party. You can look at the world over, this is what generally tends to happen. In some instances, you actually get the government to be made to resign, like you've seen in Greece, where they had to do elections 3 times in 18 months and got one prime minister elected 2 times. So those things will happen, and when they happen, we must understand them. Then, of course, where we're focusing as ANC would be on subjective issues, where it's our own weaknesses as the ANC that we need to correct and strengthen, so that the ANC can recover the confidence of many people. And you'll notice as well that the ANC support was still quite high. The only thing that happened is many people, for various reasons, had decided not to vote. So there's a large number of people who support the ANC but who decided for various reasons they're not voting. It doesn't necessarily mean the ANC has completely lost that support, but it means the ANC has got a homework to correct a number of things and then reorganize that support that we have had in the metros. But we must also note that there's been a huge movement of people coming into the city centers, and amongst them are people who were coming here because they looked for jobs, wanted to have housing, and they wanted to have schools and everything. But when they feel the frustration of not getting jobs and not getting houses, they'll blame the ruling party. And so those are some of the factors that are important.